We are seeing the motorcade of King Charles and Queen Camilla approaching the Arc de Triomphe. So the two leaders, Emmanuel Macron and King Charles, will be meeting momentarily. We are going to listen in for a minute. And Philip, if you see something that you can help give us some context to and guide us through, if you could pop in when you feel like you need to.
You know, they're arriving now, and you get off. I hope you're showing this. They're getting off and out of the car. Do you want me to come back on?
Philip, yes, we are all watching along with you there, the two leaders and their wives greeting each other, customary, the French double cheek kiss as well there. So, Philip, we're watching along with you. If there's something that you notice and that you think our viewers could use some more context to understand, yes, please jump in whenever you feel.
Yeah, this is like the culmination, maybe I think, of years and years of waiting by King Charles. Remember that France was one of the first countries that his mother visited when she became queen back in 1952, her first state visit here in 1957. She was very fond of France, came here on 5 state visits and all, the last one in 2014. So I think a feeling that King Charles is coming back to familiar territory, but it's pastures new for him because he's coming here in a totally different capacity and being met by a man he knows who is President Emmanuel Macron, but in totally different circumstances to the previous one. So a very symbolic moment here at the Arc de Triomphe, reserved for heads of state, a state visit, something that is very symbolic for not only the French but also the British. This is something that the French do very well, bringing in heads of state to all the pomp and circumstance of France that is now being shown around the world. And it's a great selling point for France as well when one is shown these images of, for example, King Charles arriving here in Paris.
Just to explain to our viewers what we're seeing here, the two leaders, Macron and King Charles, are reviewing the French troops here. And then we are, shortly after this, going to see the aerobatic teams of the two countries' air forces flying above the Arc de Triomphe, that's the Patrie de France, and Britain's Red Arrows. Macron and King Charles are now walking to the Arc de Triomphe. They will be laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, which is located just under the Arc de Triomphe. And the purpose of this is said to mark the shared sacrifices of the past and an enduring legacy of cooperation.
Canon. Présentez à au nord.
You just heard the national anthems of the United Kingdom and France, followed by the fighter jets from both France and England flying over the Arc de Triomphe. It's the Patrouille de France and Britain's Red Arrows. Those are the acrobatic teams of the two countries' air forces. Now, Philip, I'm struck by the solemn moment and the emotional moment that we're seeing here. I mean, these are two countries that over the centuries have fought alongside each other, have fought against each other. What do you think of the decision to start this state visit with this type of event?
This is normal protocol that the visit will start with a visit to the Champs-Élysées and an honour of the fallen of the World Wars, the First World War and the Second World War, in which France and Britain fought alongside each other. And the thousands of troops who lost their lives during those conflicts. And Britain and France still have military links. They still are quite closely associated with each other when it comes to their military activities. There's a lot of cooperation which goes on between the two countries. As I said earlier on, they're both members of the United Nations Security Council, permanent members of it, and also both nuclear powers. So there is a lot of military cooperation between the two countries, and we've seen that today with this flyover by the Red Arrows and the Patrouille de France. So symbolism, I think, paying tribute to all of the soldiers, both French and British, who lost their lives during the two world wars, and the fact that whatever happens in Franco-British relations, this will always be something that will bring the two countries together. And the French Marseillaise, the French national anthem written by Rouget de Lille, played twice, and the British national anthem, God Save the Queen, also played twice, and sung, the words sung at the second performance. So a lot of symbolism to show that ties between Britain and France, whatever happens politically, whatever the country may think of each other at particular points, those relations will always be rock solid, whatever happens.
And George Gross in London, specialist in British monarchies. I wanted to get your reaction to this event so far, and it seems that you can really view the emotion on King Charles's face.
Yes, this is hugely significant for him after such a long period waiting for the job as king. I think I draw a parallel and an analogy with that of Edward VII. So we're going back to 1903, in advance of what would become the Entente Cordiale between France and Britain that led in a sense to them being allies in the First World War. And the importance there of a monarch going to Paris, going to France, post the then Boer War, and building relations, healing relations. And I think here you can see not only the emotion of a monarch doing this state visit to France for the first time. He's been many times as Prince of Wales, but now as monarch, there's clearly the emotion there, but also the emotion, of course, as has been referenced already, the shared sacrifice in the First and Second World War. It's impossible to not go to those places, to not experience when you're by the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior, whether it's in the Arc de Triomphe, under the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, or at Westminster Abbey in London, to feel that sense of emotion, those shared bonds of history. So a very important, very significant moment for the king.
Mm-hmm. And George, it is, of course, a big part of the role of a royal, of a monarch, to visit other countries, go on these types of state visits, utilize their soft power. But does King Charles have any sort of special affinity for France and French culture that you can tell us about?
Clearly, it's already been mentioned whether he has language skills. This was shown in Germany with a state visit with his German. We're told that we're going to have a speech in French as well, just like his mother. So there were shared holidays of his parents in France. He has been many, many times. He is quite, a bon vivant of food and an interest in wines. We know there's a trip to lined up to buy a dynamic vineyard. So there are lots of things that the monarch is very keen on in terms of Anglo-French relations. And then, of course, one of the most important things for Charles for so much of his life, the battle, the challenge of sustainability. And I think come back to that important Paris climate accord, that important meeting, and then agreement. So there's much that the monarch has ties with in terms of relations with France.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Philip, climate and environmentalism, this has been a pet project, a very important project for Emmanuel Macron here in France as well. So I imagine this is something that the two men bond over quite a bit.
Well, it's a funny thing that years ago, Prince Charles was mocked largely on British television for his position and views on global warming, and he was often described as a crank and someone who couldn't be taken seriously and laughed at because he was warning about the possible effects of global warming in the future. And all these years later now that he's king, I think many people see him as someone who was a visionary back then, because there was something about what he said which now rings incredibly true today. And that's something also that Emmanuel Macron is keen to discuss with King Charles. That will take place in the discussions after the ceremony is over here. You can hear Amazing Grace being played in the background. So we're drawing towards the end of the ceremony here at the Arc de Triomphe. But certainly many issues that the two leaders can discuss. And even though Charles is king, we were talking a little bit earlier on about the soft power of the visit by a British monarch to France and all the symbolism that entails. But of course there will be messages that will be passed between King Charles and Emmanuel Macron. And I think one of the messages will be that more needs to be done to fight global warming, more needs to be done to be more environmentally friendly. And I think that call by King Charles will fall certainly on sympathetic ears when it comes to the French President Emmanuel Macron, even though Emmanuel Macron himself has been criticised in France for not doing enough when it comes to trying to fight global warming in general.
For our viewers who may have just tuned in the past few minutes, you are watching the beginning of the state visit of King Charles III to France. And this is the arrival ceremony that is taking place at the Arc de Triomphe here in Paris. And we are going to listen in to the ceremony a little bit more as it wraps up.
أن يسير على خطى والديه